It's a little after 4, and we're now recording, so and we'll try to hold this to an hour. Although honestly, it's certainly more comfortable in here than any other place I do today. So the first item on the agenda would be to review and approve the minutes of May 16. Before we do that, does anybody need an agenda? I've got copies of it.
Oh, I'll take one. I mean, I have it on here, but it'd be much easier. If you don't mind. Thank you.
So review and approval of the May 16, 2022 with our special meeting minutes. Is there a motion to approve? Jamie, it's moved. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. All in favor? Anyone opposed? Okay, minutes are approved. Second item is just a report that I received an email actually a month or so ago from Seth Singleton indicating that he was ready to step down from the committee. I think he's just trying to cut back a little bit on his commitments. So he wished us well, but he has resigned from the committee. So I think on an ongoing basis, if any of us have ideas about people to come on, we're still, I think, at 14 or 15, which is right about where we want to be. But I think we should always be looking if we find people who would be good.
Well, I'm glad, Dan, that it wasn't you that was resigning.
Yeah.
Since your name was there. I thought,
Oh,
"What? You're not resigning, are you?"
The moment of
I'm not
panic
the only
there.
one who thought that.
Never occurred to me. On to the next item. I have been inundated with requests of people wanting to take the position of chair of the committee. There have been no indications from anybody. The incumbents are, I am the chair, Megan is the vice chair, Jamie is the secretary. As I've said now for a number of years, I guess, I will stay on, but I'm certainly willing to at any time, without begrudging it in the least, step back if somebody else wants to step up.
And I will certainly step back.
But also willing to stay on.
Well, let's hear the under us.
Do you mean as secretary?
As
Yes.
Would you continue?
He said,
I'd like
yes.
to nominate the whole slate that we have
Yes, yes,
existing.
we love you all.
If you're willing
love
to
not
do
doing.
it. But
Okay, I will
Everybody
consider
does a
that
great job.
a motion to re-elect the incumbent slate.
I will second that.
Any discussion?
Are you kidding?
If not, all in favor?
thank you for doing it.
Anyone
Dan, I think
opposed?
this is the 4th year that you have volunteered to do it one more time.
It's been a number of years, and I really,
We're grateful.
I think we can retire the award now,
Yes.
but thank you.
okay. The next item.
Did we actually vote?
I think we did. Is anybody opposed? We had a vote in favor. I think unless somebody voices opposition, I'm going to consider it a unanimous vote. Okay. Updates on broadband and the skating rink. Kathy, I meant to email you to make sure you're.
Well, I saw it on the agenda. Better think of something to
And
say.
I hope we're keeping actually brief because I'm hoping we can spend most of our time on the follow-on to the
Yes.
stakeholders meeting. So
So broadband, we have now engaged Brian Lippold of Casco Bay Advisors for the next stage of his work. So we had him do the study of what's existing in town. So if I haven't covered this already, we hired Casco Bay Advisors to drive every road and every driveway in town and to make a map for us on who's got what. And 96 to 97% of the town is covered with Spectrum services. So people could have cable if they wanted. Only about 3 to 4% do not have access to that. And so would be relying on DSL for internet services from Consolidated, because that's usually available. But so there's a very small percentage of people who are not covered. So our next step is to take that real current data to all the internet providers across the state and say, who's interested in trying to do a fiber to the premises in the town of Mount Desert? and gauge people's level of interest and see what they might come back with any proposals. His guess is that it will only be the two incumbents, the people who are already here, Spectrum and Consolidated. There might be some wiggle room with Spectrum to actually access some of those properties that don't have access yet, because there's enough density in those areas, and they're obliged to do that by maybe federal law. And we know that Consolidated is moving into, whenever they're doing new things, they really are moving into fiber. And so they are working with some communities, like the whole Blue Hill Peninsula, to do fiber to the premise throughout. And there's state and federal money that's going towards that effort in a multi-town region. So we're going to have those conversations and see what their plans are on their own. If there's any enticements they need to come and do something here in the town, and then move from there and see what the town wants to do, et cetera. So the next phase of this would be to engage public support for a plan. So come up with some plans and then see how the town wants to move forward with it. And if necessary, would the town put any money into that? So that's where we are. We had the Board of Selectmen approve the plans for Casco Bay to follow through that proposal.
There was a news item this morning that the state of Maine's been allocated $110 million for broadband.
Yes, and I think that may already be in, some of it may already be spoken for, because it's money that came down, and the Connect Maine Authority was already allocating some things, and so this might be some crossover there. But now, the other thing that he did say that Brian told us was, because we know that cable covers so much of the town, we are not likely to be a recipient of a lot of those funds, because we already have good coverage.
We're not
And it's
underserved
intended for people who are really underserved.
Right.
So if you look at speed tests, et cetera, it doesn't meet the state's qualification of what broadband is, which is 100 over 100. And our pattern here is inconsistent. And if anybody has Spectrum, it was out yesterday.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
nobody loves that. So it's not a perfect system, but there is coverage. And so,
Yes.
so that's where we are on
Do
that.
you know of the 96%, what percentage have broadband now and what percentage?
Well, they have access to it.
Right,
And so if they don't have it, it's because they choose not to.
so I guess I don't want to recapitulate your committee's meeting, but what's?
Why are we doing this
why
at
are we
all?
doing it? Yeah.
Exactly. Well, because cable television and internet and phone services are all coming through Spectrum. It's sometimes not the most affordable package for people, and they entice you in the first year or two of coverage, and then prices jump up, and they'll never tell you what those prices are. There are also lags when there are more people in, service quality goes down, speed goes down, and they have a bunch of outages. Fiber to the premise would be a better top of the line service, and should be less expensive than cable
And more consistent.
and more consistent. And it is what people would consider future-proof, because it's simple. It's a glass fiber, and you can add on different equipment to it at different ends. And as equipment changes over time, this could still be a good conduit for data. So that's why fiber to the premises or fiber to the home is sort of the gold standard of what communities and individuals would like to
Do we have
have.
fiber into town right now?
Yeah, this building
This
has
building?
fiber
And I would
to it.
imagine
And the
does.
school does too, yes. And some of
the
those,
new COA will, I'm sure. I
I'm
would
not,
think.
well, I'm not sure. The school has it because they're part of this, is it the Maine Memory Network or something? It's a
Maine
munici-
State something
it's an
library,
education,
school and library
exactly.
association or something.
So fiber definitely comes onto the island, and it's part of the 3-ring binder. There's a road that cuts off to the island. So Jackson Lab has it, and Bar Harbor has it. And this town of Mount Desert is connecting with Bar Harbor so that our
Municipal.
municipal lines, so
Yeah.
that the police departments can talk with each other on one seamless system. So there are pockets and there are certainly individuals who do have fiber, but it's not that widespread in town, so.
Kathy, how do we make our voice heard as a town? Is it through the broadband?
Through the committee?
Yeah, is that going to be the voice of the town?
Well, we did a survey last summer and we asked everybody to please go online and do the survey. And once you do, it automatically sets up a speed test from your computer,
Right.
wherever you are, you just click this and it starts a process of doing a speed test and then it records those things. And so we asked in that survey, how are things, what do you have? Are you happy with, what would be the most that you would pay for if you changed any services? Would you use it for work or personal or school? And if school, like what ages are you working at? Do you have problems? Do you have issues? We asked where people lived. So what village they were in. And so we were hoping to get a lot of input from that. And we did get hundreds of responses back on that. And we had a series of 7 different public meetings last year and had very poor turnout, actually, but.
Well,
I would, excuse me, but I would say one of the ways is when this comes up for, to the Board of Selectmen for a warrant article or for a decision, come to the meeting. That would be
That's
very
easy for me,
important.
but
Yeah.
I know, well,
Yeah.
yeah.
But where's that gonna be?
Well, we don't,
Right.
Well, and I think as
You'll
part
be
of this
told.
process with Casco Bay is, once we have a better handle on what companies are interested in doing anything here or what it might be doing, then we have to really do more public engagement to bring people on board and see if there's support for making any changes or doing anything. So I think there will be a process for that. And it will be from the committee trying to go out there. And so it's challenging to get people to come to committees if it's not a standing committee, et cetera. So we had a series of meetings last summer and into the fall, just sort of a highlight on what the committee was doing. But then we also met with the Connect Maine Authority, the Island Institute, and the Maine Broadband Coalition. So hear from those experts on what's going on. We had a program with the National Digital Equity Alliance and talking about digital literacy and access, et cetera, and how to engage on that. And we met with Spectrum and we met with Consolidated, and they were all public meetings and we held some of them right here.
Yeah, I guess that's not really my question. My question is, if somebody's convinced that you need fiber,
Yes.
how does that voice get to whoever it's the vote?
well, there'll be a recommendation to the Board of Selectmen. The Board of Selectmen will put something on the warrant, so there'd be
So
an
we have town
opportunity.
meeting.
Well, it would be first to
Eventually.
make sure it gets
Yeah,
on the
it's all
warrant,
right.
and then at town meeting, yeah.
And we may do another survey of all residents to say, how do you feel about this? Here's a plan, tell us how you feel about it and respond to that.
Because it's crucial for you.
But is
It
it,
is,
so,
it is for all
Yeah.
businesses.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
my last question, so it seems to me this is for businesses. I mean, I have Spectrum and I'm perfectly happy with, my service is fine for me. But I would think it would be the commercial uses that would be the ones that would.
Well, if you've got a family and you're trying to do school and work from home, maybe we'll never have another pandemic where schools are closed down and everybody's attending everything virtually. Some parents couldn't go to work because their children were in school.
Right.
And so it's the amount of use that might be going on in any particular household.
We use it.
The upload speeds in particular is where
Yes.
it's
Yeah.
night and
Yeah.
day.
You're right.
Yeah,
And I think what you said
We use
is
it a lot.
absolutely right. And that's why it can be and is going to be probably a tough sell with people because you say, well, yeah, nobody likes a cable company, but at the same time, it's adequate for what I need it for, but it's not going to be adequate forever, certainly, so.
No, and my husband and I both work from home, and like last week or maybe the week before, Spectrum
It's
was out
very
on our
slow,
street for
yeah.
like 2 days, and then it's slow, and we're both often trying to upload large files or download
Yeah.
them, and it gets, especially in the summer, it becomes very difficult.
So as more people are working from home, which is going to become more common as well, but if school kids or I think there's a move in the medical field going into telehealth too, and I think that could be,
Does it vary depending on where you are? Because I gotta say, where I am, It never goes out, hardly ever goes out. And I'm fully retired now, but I worked for 5 or 6 years significantly from home.
Right.
And I didn't really detect much difference from the way it was before I moved here,
With
where
Spectrum,
I was before.
the fiber comes in and goes to like think they call it like a node.
Yeah.
And so there's a certain number of residences that it serves. And so like, that's why in the winter, you're serviced because half your street is, in Pennsylvania or Florida, your service works a little stronger.
Right.
And then in the summer, it slows down a little bit. So you might be one of the lucky ones that there's not a lot of people on
I
whatever
didn't
node
have
you're
what you had
connected
last-
into.
If you
Yeah.
were down for 2 days,
No, I didn't
that
have
at
it
ours.
either. Yeah.
Did you lose it last night? It went down around 6:30 last night and came back up around 10:30.
No,
No, I don't
cable
think
TV was fine, but
I didn't go down either, but it
I used-
slows down in the summer.
What are you doing? Just on top of your, okay. Get your phones away.
Scary.
I will say too, Kathy, I'm meeting with the Maine Broadband Coalition on Friday, I think, to do like an audit essentially of like all of the organizations working on broadband and the varying levels. Because there's a lot of, like you just mentioned, like 6 or 7 of the big ones working in this area. So if I learn anything that's useful, I
Okay,
can
yeah, great,
pass
thank
that
you.
along.
Come join the committee.
Just what you need.
I
know.
So
Okay,
that's
that's broadband.
That's broadband.
Now let's turn to ice skating.
Now, ice skating, isn't that a great idea? So we had a meeting with Derlin. So Erica and Jamie and I met with Derlin and got some good advice, and I'm probably the holdup here. We're going to write a 1 or 2 page proposal to the town, to the Board of Selectmen, to say, there's a group of people who have an idea for a skating rink to go onto the tennis courts. We have some ideas of where we would get the materials, what it would cost. We have a growing group of people who are interested in doing this. And we're thinking that the Community Development Corporation, the 501c3, would be a great vehicle for collecting donations. Would the town accept a gift of skating rink materials from the CDC? If the CDC can buy it, then turn it over to the town so it becomes town property. And so Derlin was very encouraging. He actually reached out to the insurance company because it would be on town property and we want to make sure that the town is covered, and got a good response back. And so everything is lining up that way as well. So we're going to try and write a succinct plan, answer all the questions we can in advance, and bring that up in the August meeting for the Board of Selectmen to approve it. And then if we get that approval, then we can start reaching out to try and start raising funds for it.
We do need to get approval from the Community Development Corporation Board. And as I look, I know that the board is sitting right here. I think this is the
I'm not
board.
on the board.
I believe you are. Well,
I don't think no,
I don't think
I
so.
ever was.
And I
no.
don't think I am either. I
No,
think we
because
need-
with
maybe-
selectmen,
well, I guess
we
that's
didn't
right.
feel
It
that
would be
was
Yes,
Maybe
yes,
it's
go
just the
again.
3 of us, but I
Yeah.
think Don's on it,
Mhm.
and I think Nancy's
Oh,
on it, and I'm on it, and I think that's probably it, maybe, so.
It's a rough crew.
Yeah.
Because I started that process, and then I got a hold of Kathy and I said, by the way, who is it that's gonna actually own this? And who's gonna receive this gift?
You've got room in your garage,
Give
don't
it
you?
to
Come
them.
on.
Money's in my name
Okay.
for some reason.
All right,
So how will that work? You
so
will,
I would think,
you will have a meeting?
before the Community Development Corporation begins accepting funds, I think we should have the board approve it, but perhaps the order is the select board approves the concept. And then we'll approve. You know,
That
we'll
makes
just
sense.
have a
And
quick-
also you'll have a sense of how much it's gonna be. I mean,
Yeah.
it's all.
We'll just have like a quick Zoom meeting. It'll take like 5
Mm-hmm.
minutes probably. And then we'll, and then off we
Let's
go.
get other people on
The-
that.
The only other thing
There are
that
other
concerns
people
me a
in
little
it, I
bit
can't
is the Community Development Corporation's staff is, shall we say, non-existent. So if I'm a little concerned, we're gonna get hundreds of $10 contributions. And who's gonna
Who's gonna bell the
manage
cat?
that.
We'll figure it out.
Yeah, we
Okay.
can figure that out.
As the person who checks the mailbox and keeps track of the bank account, you know, that could get to be a lot of accounting, depending on.
Yeah.
You know, if it's 25 contributions.
If that's how,
large
if
contributions,
that's how it's
yeah.
going, I think we just hire somebody.
Yeah. Okay, all right,
And I think that our organization, we can help with that as well and help keep track of things and help generate the acknowledgement letters, you know, for tax purposes, because that would be the reason for going through this is because somebody can, it's a donation to a nonprofit
right,
organization or corporation, and they should have a tax letter
Right.
that they can use
Right.
later on.
Yeah,
So we can help facilitate that as well.
well, there'll be some mechanics to work out.
Yes.
Yeah.
is that a 501c3 or is that a 501c4?
It's a 501c3, community development is.
The other one is the
Economic
C4.
Development Corporation is the C4.
Oh, okay, you're right, yeah. I knew
That's why
one
we
was
did
one.
that.
Yeah, I couldn't remember.
We don't know what
which way
they
were.
do, but we don't.
The basic
There are
idea is
letters and numbers.
community
Yeah.
development is for
That's
broad community
Yeah,
benefit.
Public
and is-
benefit,
And
right.
is tax deductible. C4 is,
yeah,
private
that's
benefit
right,
is
that's
not.
right.
okay. Anything else on skating, Kathy?
No,
Okay,
but think about people who might enjoy skating and want to make a contribution to it.
the next item is report concerning communication with Summer Residents Association. At the May meeting, I think a subcommittee of Carrie and Tony and April were tasked with communicating with the SRA, and they did. There was a briefer blurb that went into the newsletter, their spring newsletter, and then there was a more expansive memo that was sent out to the membership via email. And it was crafted jointly by Tony, I think, did the first draft, and then April and Carrie chimed in, and I think we had a decent product. And I'm not aware there's been any particular response. Tony, you may have.
No, I walk around now with my shoulders hunched, but no, there's been no negativity. And a matter of fact, when a lady moved in for the summer, they've been coming here for decades. And she blistered me and the town about the utility poles. And so I explained to the process how those were chosen, a committee of volunteers. And earlier this week or last week, I got an email from her, completely different tone. Now that the trees are leafed out, you don't see the poles, and she's very content.
Yay.
So those, if you're in this business to get a lot of those type emails, you're in the wrong business. So when you get them, they really are appreciated. So that was good news. And we're still ahead on positive comments versus negative comments on the overall project.
Good.
Well, my comment would be, I thought you did a remarkable job of the transformation that Main Street underwent in a period of about 1 week, right before Memorial Day. You know, I would not have, a week before Memorial Day, I would not have bet a lot of money that it would look the way it did Memorial Day weekend.
There was a lot of scrambling by the paving companies.
Yeah.
And the good thing
I
is,
also tell people when they ask me about the things, I said, well, you know, there's still a lot of cosmetic work that will be done before next year. So it will look even better next year than what it does now. So that helps sometimes too.
I would sort of echo what Tony said. I was sort of being at the end of Main Street. People, like, we just end up with sort of the comments down there. And other than a couple, oh, those poles, they're so ugly. Someone said they look like spaceship antennas or something, which anyway, I think the comments have been positive, or just no comments at all, which is a positive. And I just the other day, I forget who it was, but they said, oh, those new sidewalks are so wonderful. And I thought, good. And I've been, and I think it's important to tell people, oh, it's not done. And like, there's still, it's going to look completely different next summer when they return. So.
Would it be possible to get a copy of that, the message that went to the SRA? I don't, have we already gotten that? I don't remember seeing. it.
The SRA.
Well, they you said a letter was generated that
Yeah.
went to into
Yeah.
the SRA newsletter.
I'm pretty sure.
It's online.
I think it's not.
On my website.
If someone gets me a copy, I'll attach it with the minutes.
Okay, I'll do that, Jamie. I'm pretty sure it'll take me a while to find it, but I think I'm probably got it in my computer.
It was an excellent step-by-step explanation.
Yeah, that would be,
Yeah.
I'd love to see it.
Yeah, I haven't seen it either.
And
Tony?
with any luck at all, the utility pole we need to get power to the EV charging station in the north parking lot will be set in July. And then, but it's making progress. And that was a big leap forward, going through the nuances of Versant.
Okay, why don't we, if we can, move on to report regarding the stakeholders meeting. As you all recall, in May, we decided to try to engineer getting together a group of stakeholders to discuss what each group was doing, what their priorities were, and see if we were operating and there were opportunities for cooperation and make sure we weren't operating at cross purposes. And each group was invited to have 2 representatives at the meeting. I asked Megan to accompany me, and so we were the 2 representatives of the committee. However, we also had Kathy and Jen present at the meeting wearing different hats. So we had good representation at the meeting. But I wondered if, and Megan has done a very nice written summary, which maybe we can distribute after the meeting. But if you could maybe, Megan, just kind of give a brief overview of what happened.
Yeah, so Jamie, first of all, thank you for your suggestion because it was, I mean, I left feeling very happy about how it went. I think everybody around the table was like very like, why haven't we done this before? This makes perfect sense. This is such a great idea. Like it was a very positive sort of an attitude. And I think we started somewhat structured and then the conversation sort of veered this way and that, but I think my major takeaways is that everybody acknowledged the connection between workforce and housing and really was discussing how we can't address one without the other. And I think Ireland Housing Trust was very happy to hear that and happy to be at the table and just sort of for them to hear, you know, what COA was thinking about housing and to hear what the Summer Residents Association, what they were thinking about it. I think that was good. It came up a couple of times that the town has historically been really good at being creative about trying to support different economic development initiatives, not directly, but through different zoning policies and through changes, zoning in particular. Geraldine talked a lot about. We talked about the short-term rental Airbnb situation and how that's different than, you know, often, you know, there's a history of year-round residents at times renting their house out in the summer, which affords them the ability to live here year-round. So sort of the nuance around rentals. And we had a really interesting, and Jen can sort of, you know, provide more thoughts on this, but I really enjoyed hearing from the chamber too. They were pretty enthusiastic about what the chamber could do and could be and want to be very involved in, you know, any sort of economic development thing that goes forward. They'd like to be at the table and involved in discussions. And the Summer Residents Association, Jim Green, I have never met him before, and that was a really wonderful thing. He was very positive and he just kept saying, you know, use us, you know, like
We got the money.
yeah, like straight up, we have money, let us give you money, basically. You know, we talked about, you know, the wonderful things the SRA did during COVID and how that was helpful. And then we had sort of a more general discussion about the importance of sustaining the year-round community. There was some question about, you know, if you start trying to attract year-round residents or make a lot of changes to the community, what's that going to do to tourism or any of these other things? Is that going to cause any issues. And I think there was a good conversation around why it's important to sustain the year-round community, and without it, not much else works. And, you know, we sort of discussed the history of the year-round community and the summer residents and how that has always sort of worked. And we kind of left things with, we all felt really good about the meeting and wanted to know where to go from there. And Jim Green was like, let's come up with some action items, let's get going. And Dan very appropriately was like, let's take a beat, let's reflect. This has been a really good opportunity. And we are in the process of setting up another meeting for August, where we've all been charged with coming to the table with a couple of potential action items, things that we as a larger economic development stakeholder unit can do. And the hope too is that Friends of Acadia can be at that meeting. They weren't able to make this past meeting.
So is this all in your report?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yes.
so I'll circulate that in
Yep.
the minutes too.
Yeah. I think
Yeah.
that's-
One really interesting thing that I thought was cool was that Darren Collins from COA said that kids that live in the apartments are part of their contract for a rate reduction is that they'll volunteer for nonprofits in the town of Mount Desert, which that was the first time I'd heard that. And I thought that was excellent news. In a
So
good way.
So
Darren was there.
Yeah.
Yeah. My comments, just quickly, it was clear the predominant discussion was over housing and the ability for people who want to live and work in Northeast Harbor to be able to find a place to live. Interestingly enough, broadband, I don't believe came up.
Yeah,
You mentioned
I
at the very
mentioned that.
end, yeah, at the very end, and people were like, oh, yeah.
Yeah, so that may say something, but it was, I thought, others probably, I hope agree that housing was the predominant concern of all involved. And Jim Green is a, let's have some action items kind of a guy, so he wanted action items, and I did put a pause, thought rather than having everybody give their thoughts based on 15 seconds of reflection, maybe we'll have another meeting. So we're going to have an August meeting, and our task, each group is tasked with coming back with at least two ideas of things, concrete things that could be done. So I wanted to have a discussion around that, and to get it going, I have a couple of thoughts that I have jotted down here. One is, every time I walk by 2 Rock End Road, right next to the neighborhood house, the old Stanley Plumbing Building, and see that it's for sale, and I think, why wouldn't it be a good thing to redevelop that as a multi-using, it may be a tear down, but that property for multi-unit housing, it'd be an upgrade to the property. It's perfectly positioned. It's right next to Main Street. And I think there's room behind it for parking. It just, what's asking price is $650,000. I'm sure that whoever bought it would have to dump in probably at least that much into it.
it's funny you should bring that up, because yesterday I saw Erica Wibby Mitchell showing a woman that property. So today I asked her about it, and it's probably all confidential, but she said she didn't. She
Well, we're
said
in a public meeting, it's being recorded, so you know.
So we call it small town
she
confidential.
said
Nothing gets out of town.
she said she didn't think that I don't know who it was, this person would actually buy it. But so I think Erica must know all of the ins and outs of the condition and everything. So
I walked through it because another realtor contacted us to say, hey, this is available, and do you need it even for parking? Because, the COA project, they're not going to get an occupancy permit until they have a lease on 7 additional off-site parking spaces like that. And so, parking is one of our other big topics. So we thought, okay, let's take a look at it. And when we first heard about it, the price was $350,000. We thought that would be great. So we were going to be the first people to walk through it. And then they stopped and said, actually, putting a pause on that.
Second thought.
And now it's going to be $650. And so that's when we went and took a look at it and talked to Actually, I talked to Bob Fall to say, hey, Bob, what do you think? You know this building? And he said, yeah, it's a tear down. There are some unsafe, unsound things that, there's some fun individual features inside, but it's mostly a tear down. I also heard that the family, the estate of the family that's selling it, it's being managed by Bar Harbor Bank and Trust. And so they are the ones who are accepting offers, and they have had 2 offers so far. Well, excuse me, they have had 2 deadlines, and they have had some offers that came in at each of those 2 deadlines, and they haven't accepted any of them.
Well, this just struck me as when Jim Green said, geez, we got lots of money, we just tell us something we can do. Well, to me, there's something they could do.
I think that's a great idea.
Yeah,
It's a really good idea.
I just realized it was for sale again. I thought that sale sign was down.
And maybe they work through Island Housing Trust, an
Right.
existing
Right.
organization,
With
or
MD
MD 365, yeah,
Or,
Even if it is a tear
or
Yeah.
COA,
yeah.
if COA wants to put,
I think that's a
More
great
so you
idea.
can put a
manufactured.
You
you know,
could-
up there.
yeah,
Pretty
it's-
simple.
So who would buy it?
well,
That's
that's a question. Then there's the question, I know there's a sensitivity to
Right.
tax rolls, although I can't think that building's generating a lot of property tax revenue the way it is now. Maybe it is.
I don't think that would be a problem.
Yeah.
I think the biggest issue is, it seems to me it'd be either 365 or Island Housing Trust is the logical.
Unless COA wanted to put, some
I
more
hate to think of
students
it going to Park, no offense, but, it just,
Yeah.
we need housing so much, yeah.
there. Yeah, I'm not thinking of, I'm
Yeah.
thinking of COA doing it for housing, not parking, just expanding their presence. I don't know
If they need it or are interested.
our role in my book is throw the idea out there.
Yeah, I think it's
see
a
if there's-
great
see if
idea.
there's
I think it's a
interest.
great idea.
And,
Well,
Yeah.
even if it isn't COA, there's a need for
Yeah.
housing.
Sure,
right,
yeah.
and that to me
exactly.
would be, is less likely to be a NIMBY problem, because if I'm living on
Right.
Rock End Road, I'm gonna say,
Right.
well, anything's
Right.
improvement over.
Yeah,
over
really.
now.
Yeah.
So,
I think that's great.
Excellent.
okay. So that was one thought I had. The other potential partner for that I thought of was Jackson Lab. They are always,
Yes.
they're building housing. And maybe that's something that would be of interest to them. So just another potential partner. My next idea, I think the town needs, and we can be maybe a motivator for this, to get going on addressing through municipal ordinance short-term rentals.
Yes,
Um,
yes.
Yep.
A year ago, I brought that up at a selectmen's meeting, and it's gone to the Luso committee, and it's,
And
and kind of, well, not died, but they've been, I'll just say the progress has been slow. And we have, the town hired Noel Musson as a consultant to help the committee find its way. I've been to a couple of their meetings to discuss it. And I guess the committee, from my observation, does not feel this is an emergency. I think it is an emergency. And I think it's an emerging emergency.
Right.
It's already an emergency in Bar Harbor.
Right.
It's an emergency all up and down the coast. And if it's not too bad yet in our town, at least we don't know how bad it is, because we don't have any ordinance at all. Anybody can do anything. So I feel that I would love to see some muscle.
If the stakeholders adopted that as a priority, we could have representatives from that stakeholders group perhaps come to a selectmen's meeting.
I'd like to kind of give you an update. The Luso committee met last night, and I thought they've made excellent progress. Noel has got a lot of information and stuff, and I think we should probably be ready to do at least a registration ordinance for this town meetings, which I think is tremendous progress, so.
Yeah.
So we
Yeah.
can.
I'm glad to hear that, Derl, I hadn't
I
heard
was
that.
very impressed with what I saw last
Good.
night. So a lot of progress has been made in just a few weeks from whence we met the last time. So I'm pretty confident we're going to have something for town meeting this year.
Yeah, to me, if something could be crafted that I think the opposition revolves around exactly what Megan said. which
Right.
is-
Yeah.
But you could distinguish by ordinance between owner occupied,
Right,
that for some portion of the year are owner occupied, and just straight,
Investors.
investment groups
Right.
come in and buy them.
and there's some of that already.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
there's several definitions that cover that
Yeah.
we reviewed last night.
I'm
So
sure that this is.
Other towns up and down the state, from small
yeah.
ones like.
I'm sure it's out there. The template is out there. I'm
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah,
So
So that's
those
two.
definitions are already out. They don't have to be, redrawn.
very. This-
Number 3, this one's a little out there and more
Oh,
specific. COA has this requirement that the students perform nonprofit volunteer work, which is nice. But would it be more useful to the community if the students were required to work in the summer for local businesses that can't find staff?
I think that's a great suggestion. Yeah,
They have a place to live right in town. We have restaurants that aren't open because they can't find staff.
and there's nothing more humbling and enlightening than
Yes.
waiting tables.
And they can get
And make
paid.
money.
And they get paid.
Yeah.
Who knows, maybe it'll start a trend, college students having summer jobs.
I mean, that
I think that's a
That
good
was the
idea.
idea of having them come anyway, is that it's an age population
Get
that
'em
we
in the-
don't have in
Get them
town.
in the,
It's
And
good.
they can, I'm hoping that they're going to be able to work in some of those shops that now close at 5 o'clock.
Right.
So that they can stay open longer. If we have a
And-
restaurant that's open, that's a good time for people to be shopping as well.
that's a
Maybe
great,
Jen-
that's great,
yeah.
yeah.
Jen, can you comment? I mean, you're closer to what's happening on Main Street, and you too, Nancy, as to whether that would be
And Stephanie,
useful.
Stephanie,
And
I
Stephanie,
think-
Stephanie's there too, yeah.
I think it's probably complicated because I don't know if those kids would stay after school got out, or first week of June.
So that's, I guess, part of the, in my view, part of the quid pro quo for getting that housing would be you commit to working in Northeast Harbor in the summertime.
where would you be that would be nicer?
Right, you have an apartment. You already have your
Northeast
apartment.
Harbor in the
I
summer.
don't think you have to mandate it. I think it will happen. I
But they have
think,
to have a place to live. I don't know.
well, no,
what-
the people that do, that are coming, I think there's a very good chance. Look at all the COA students that are involved in,
But do
town
they,
already.
what I don't know, when we can find out, but do they, I'm not sure they have the availability of those housing units in the summer. I don't know.
Yeah.
No, but
It's worth a conversation with Darren. I'm not sure what he's figured out.
Yeah, no, if you're in college and you have a dorm room, you can't live
But
there all summer.
are you suggesting that we tell COA how to,
it sounds
how to
so.
treat
I
their
think
students?
suggesting is the word I have on suggest. So,
God.
Well, and Darren did say at the meeting that, this is the first year that they're trying this. He doesn't really know what the volunteer piece looks like. He doesn't
Right.
really know. So maybe now is a good time to
yes,
Throw it out.
suggest something.
yeah. Yeah, and Stephanie, would that be of help to you? Not there. Okay. So anyway, those are 3 thoughts I
Everybody's
had.
having a terrible time getting help, so I think that's a great idea.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's excellent, yeah.
And
I
even
don't
if,
know if you'd want to have mandated workers. I mean, maybe the restaurant business does.
well,
but
maybe
certainly I
what
don't
it
feel
is,
that way.
maybe it's you can stay in your apartment
If you have
rent-free
a
for the
job.
summer if you have a job.
Right,
Right.
okay.
Well, and maybe it's not even necessarily COA connected.
Or
If
it could
they're
be-
planning to clear kids out
Or-
end of May,
Or bring another.
COA might be willing to,
Yeah.
I mean,
Make
they
the
want some
housing
background
available.
checks probably, but allow people to come in and rent
To
for a
use
low
the
price.
apartments,
To
yeah.
Yeah.
But I just thought it'd be good to get a little momentum of the kind of the old days when college students would
Yeah.
come in and be the,
Right.
Yeah.
summer employees.
Well, I will say that I had 2 different COA students who just graduated this year, interning for us, one last summer and one last fall. And one of them is now working for Noel Musson. Was excellent, is interested in planning and stuff anyway, so she's
She's
working
wonderful.
for Noel.
Yeah, I didn't
She
know
is
that.
wonderful,
Okay.
Callie. And the other one is now working for the Bar Harbor Housing Authority.
But let me ask you this
And
question.
so, where are they living? They are living in a pretty awful little cramped apartment in Bar Harbor. that is often occupied by other COA students during the school year. And now there are 4 of them sharing like a
Yeah.
1-bedroom apartment. It's
Yeah.
ridiculous. So, yeah,
That's
it's
what
pretty
my
awful
granddaughter's in
conditions.
San Francisco. She can't afford anymore.
Okay. So now having dominated the conversation, I'll shut up.
And used up all the good ideas.
I mean, we were tasked to come up back with 2 ideas. I think we probably can come back with more. I don't think we should come back with 12, but, and you may want to save yours, Kathy, because you're gonna have 2 for.
I know. Well, it's gonna be about housing and, you know, but
Yeah.
that's what our organization is. gonna
Right.
do.
Well, so this isn't an idea, but I have a question. So I was walking up here through the marina parking lot and it's absolutely full. What benefit does the town get from people parking there?
Nothing.
Well, people who come to, that we're actually having, in the midst of a discussion, we had, the Harbor Committee is doing a study of the parking situation down there. And they gave their preliminary findings from last year to the Board of Selectmen on Monday. And they're doing another follow-up study to see how full is it? What are the problems? What's enforcement look like? What do we need to have it work? I would say there is some benefit for having people come to our town, no matter what. So if they're coming and then they stop and get something to eat, and they go to the Nor'easter, they go up to Dockside, or, you know, the Colonels, I think that's a good thing. So I think that would be a benefit.
But if they just coming to park, that's what I was wondering.
2 years ago,
I don't know if they
there was concern that people were parking there and taking the bus and boogieing out of town. They're
That's
just
one of the
using it
things
for
they're
all-day parking.
studying, yeah.
Yeah.
That's one of the things they're trying to figure out, if people are just using it as a drop-off to take the bus. So we don't know yet.
So
So there's a study in place
okay.
to try and figure that out.
Because I thought when Bar Harbor put in meters that was nuts, and then it turns out they're making
Well, that's one of the
millions
considerations,
Oh, it's a
that's one of the
great idea.
considerations.
Yeah.
Should we be metering that
Even
or
very-
part of it? Or
Very cheap.
yeah,
Yeah, we've had a woman from the police department from Bar Harbor over here
we have a meter
monitoring
system for
security
some
deploy
of the
for us. I
resident,
thought,
or
last year,
a
that's what she was
parking
walking up and down
system
Main
for some
Street
of
in
the
Chatham.
residents.
Didn't have
Yeah, we're
anything
putting
to
in,
do with
yeah.
Northeast Harbor. She was perhaps hired by us, but
Huh, okay.
Well, the police departments are
Yeah,
working
working together.
together.
that's.
And so the streets here are all labeled as 2-hour parking. And that's what
Right.
she's doing,
She
is
was
so
doing
she's
right.
the traffic person in
Yeah.
Bar Harbor.
Yeah.
She has a couple of days down here because it's a mutual
And-
combined.
And
would
we
think
asked
there's
for more
departments.
enforcement, yeah.
The
yeah.
conclusions that come out of that would be worth
Yeah.
reviewing.
Yes.
Well, and you know, the town has now got a bunch of parking spaces marked off in the Gray Cow lot as permit parking only. And so they're marked off with green paint to differentiate them from the others. But I was wondering, I thought it was only going to be overnight parking by permit only. But the signage says permit parking only. And so during the day, other people might think, I can't park
I
here.
think that might be because the harbor master could boot people up here for permit parking if they're overflowed down there, I think, but I'm with you, I thought it was basically, and more or less just for winter, honestly.
And for overnight.
Yes, yeah,
for
and overnight, yes,
Yeah,
yeah.
so.
Can I just throw out, as long as we're on parking, a quick thought? As I was walking here today, I came up Main Street. And there were cars parked on Kimball Road, up out of state license plates. They were parking because they probably came down Main Street, couldn't find a place to park. The Gray Cow parking lot sits mostly empty, but it's at the wrong end of Main Street. You know, people, it's a one-way street. By the time people get down there, they can't figure out how to get back to that parking lot. And I just wonder if there's a way through signage or something to somehow encourage people to just make a left into that parking lot before they get down Main Street.
Mhm.
So that's just a quick
Yeah.
thought. And my other quick thought, and I promise to shut up. Nancy came up shopping yesterday afternoon to Main Street. And she went into Jen's store and I believe she went into Nancy's store. And they were basically the only two places of business, she said, that were open on Sunday, and she had she overheard several conversations of people saying, how come none of the stores are open? And my question is that a staffing issue?
Staffing.
That
So-
was,
I think so.
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
so
It's a business decision, I think, in the case of.
some of it's a
Right,
lifestyle
right,
decision for
yeah.
some, but.
But I think staffing is a big part of it.
Yeah, but that's a concern if people are, it's the same thing as people in the off season stopping on the street saying, where can I get something to eat? And you have to say.
Bar Harbor.
Bar Harbor, right?
that's,
So,
I'm just curious about that big truck that was there all morning
That was COA, I assume.
on the main street.
It was probably Diana. She. had-
No, this
No?
was for the COA building,
No.
but they were there for hours.
well, the stores, on their website, they say they're gonna be open August 1st.
Yeah,
That's like a week and a half.
Yeah.
Yeah.
maybe. Oh, Took up a lot of
In
parking.
front of
Yeah.
your place.
And your- Yeah, it
also-
was there all
Yeah.
hours.
Well, I know that this morning Diana had a truck coming in and delivering furniture to her shop as
did
well.
too.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So I don't know about the other truck, but I know she did because we had some conversation about that.
this one was there literally for up 4 hours
Detail.
at least. Not
She got
more.
some great furniture in there.
Took up like 6
But
parking spaces, I think, something like
Yeah,
that.
shouldn't,
I know,
I think loading.
So
should
when we're
occur
talking
on
about-
Tracy Road.
yeah. Me too.
And at a different
Or at
hour.
a different time,
Yeah.
in the evening.
Other thoughts? Anybody?
Well, we're gonna have an issue. We're about to start, the next couple of nights, we have some plans for announcing our work on Main Street
Right.
and, you know, refurbishing the existing buildings and building on the empty lots. And one of the nightmares we're gonna face is, how are we gonna do that? On Main Street with
Physically.
no access from Tracy Road. I worry about it, about the disruption for business. And so, not as well as where's the power gonna come from, et cetera. So, so we're gonna have some challenges there, but,
Yeah.
so keep people informed.
Luckily, you're very creative.
Well, helicopter it is, right?
We'll see how COA gets bid it, right?
Well, because they have access,
They
and that
have
lot goes all the
access.
way through to Tracy. And
Oh,
so
okay.
most of the time, they had vehicles coming in from the backside.
Yeah. Yeah.
But we don't have that down the rest.
And that took up actually quite a bit of on-street parking on Tracy Road throughout the winter. And now if you have to
Yes.
transfer that over to Main Street, yeah, that's,
Well, it's not a problem in the winter, really, but it's gonna be a problem in the
yeah.
summer.
Yeah.
Hmm.
So feel sorry for me later, okay?
Okay.
Headaches.
But is there something that our committee can help in terms of, how can we help? Okay.
So, yeah, well, you know what, so I'll give you a little heads up about what we're gonna be presenting tomorrow, is
Right.
that this is a major undertaking
Yeah.
for Main Street. This could transform that whole block. We are going to try and maximize the housing that the existing ordinances would allow us to have on those properties.
Which is at the end, you're talking?
Yes, it is. We had 3 properties for a number of years now, and then we just recently bought John Boynton's 4th property, where
Okay.
Diana's platform is now.
Mhm.
So now we have, that's another one that burned down in 2008, and the other one in 2009, where 151 was, and then the 2 existing buildings. So we have just this week signed on Matthew Baird to be our architect, and we're about to go into like a 3-month feasibility study for what the possibilities are. But just using the existing ordinances, we can have about 14 apartments between those 4 lots. That would be a game changer, I think.
Yeah.
Especially if you
You know?
combine it with 2 Rock End Road.
Well, that's why we're looking at Rock and Road too. But some of our challenges are going to be power, getting 3-phase power to that site because it's not available on Main Street. That parking, we need to have enough parking for everybody. So we're actually thinking about underground parking at the back of the lot. Because there's about a 6-foot drop off from Main
Yeah, that's
Street to the
right.
back of
Yeah.
the lot. So if we dig down a little further, is that a crazy idea? So we're gonna have to do some bore tests and figure out how far can we go before we're, talking about blowing up the world to get down there. And then styles, contemporary styles, but also what kind of businesses do people want? Do we need? And that we will support on a year-round basis. So we're going to be asking people for input on all of those kinds of questions, as well as architectural style.
So this is 14 apartments plus how many?
Plus, we could, right now, we could have 6 or 7 different commercial spaces. the way
So
it's
you're
designed.
rehabbing the 2 existing buildings and then building on each side of it?
Building on each side and maybe behind it as well.
So you could, if you left the vacant lot at the very end, vacant while you did the rest, you could stage.
Yeah, so that's what I'm thinking, is that it will be a staging
Yeah.
project, and so we will have to be creative about that. And we would try to make sure that we put a big pause in the summertime so that we're not taking up the whole street and all the commotion and noise. And so it could just be, it'll take longer to construct it if you take the best weather months out of the picture, but
Right.
unless they're already inside.
And
You
the
know,
other,
if
the other
everything else
thing
is up.
that we might facilitate, the town could facilitate is, it seems like, particularly if it wasn't the height of the season, it would be feasible to close for periods of time that very end of Main Street. So people would just have to, bear left and, that little triangle where the neighborhood
Yes.
is, you could close off
Left.
one prong of that
Oh,
triangle
I see, yeah.
without really disrupting things too much in the off season.
And that's past us, though. We're
Yeah,
not,
but
there are
you,
a
but
couple
it's
of buildings
close
past,
enough,
but
isn't it?
yeah, but as a staging area, yes, that could
Yeah.
work, yes. Yeah, that would be nice. So, I mean, it's going to take a fortune to do this. And so my pitch is going to be, it's the time for this generation to make, this is a huge investment. And it should be something that we all participate in, because these lots have been vacant for over 10 years. If market forces were going to work to build them up, it would have happened by now. So that's
Right.
not going to work. So this should be a real community effort to
Right.
pull this together. So we're not asking everybody for money tomorrow, but we're asking for ideas and interest and support down the road to pull it all
So I
together.
guess I know where you're headed at the next stakeholders meeting.
That we're going to put in some apartments
That's a great,
and then housing down the street from there.
Well,
So
that's-
you guys are gonna have a great
Is
meeting.
there something against a community trust that would encompass all of this and raise resources specifically for that kind of, for Main Street?
Well, the Economic Development Corporation could raise money for specific properties like that and accept donations. They're just not tax deductible. And that's what, Megan's really more of an expert on this than I am, but the Economic Development Corporations, that's what they do in most communities. They have revolving loan funds, and they have the ability to, property like 2 Rock End Road comes up, they buy it, so they control it. Then they figure out, then they find a developer and sell it to the developer and then have revolving loan funds to help them get going. But that takes money, and in most of those, they're larger municipalities, and it's public money. Usually.
But our donations to MB 365 are tax.
They are,
deductible.
yeah.
Right,
yes.
Mhm.
Right, so.
Enormous community.
So
we'll
that's
be
the way
talking to-
So that's
People can
good.
participate.
Yeah, exactly, yes.
Yeah.
We know who they are.
Yeah. We got some ideas, Jim, on how you can spend your money.
He was very adamant, but he said it like 3 or 4 times.
Yes,
So
money,
we
have
have money.
He's in our.
I wonder if his members are as enthusiastic.
They're after us again.
All right. Well, I think we're just at 1 hour. I don't want to, if people have other ideas.
This has been a great meeting.
Yeah.
Dan, great ideas and participation.
And in person.
Good, yeah. and in
Well, I
person.
was gonna just reminisce, it was almost exactly a
I know.
year ago
Oh,
that I sat in this very chair, Kathy, you sat right
I
there,
did.
and Derlin, you sat right
Reluctantly.
there. And I had COVID and didn't know
That's
it.
right.
Oh,
that's
yeah.
right.
Oh, I
Like a day
forgot.
later.
Yeah.
And no one got it.
No.
Kathy thought she had it. You had a sore, I remember you.
Yeah, I did have a sore throat or something, but I tested a
Yeah.
bunch of times and didn't have it, and I,
Yeah.
stayed home until we got.
So
some
I'm,
done, so.
hopefully we were skated through this meeting too. And how do people feel about this versus
So much
Nice to
better,
be
so much
together.
better.
We
I
may
think-
want to reevaluate in the dead of winter when half our membership isn't around, but.
Well,
just-
doing a hybrid.
I think hybrid
Yeah,
works,
this is
yeah.
good.
Okay.
Can I just add one more thing that, just random, but I just noticed this today. Just to put things in perspective, it was 10 years ago this month that the Urban Land Institute issued their report on Northeast Harbor.
Wow.
No,
And
yeah.
as Martha knows, we're still working to make it a beehive of activity, or what was
Yeah.
the term they used?
That was the term.
Yes. So it's still a work in progress, but the fact that our fear at that point was you lose steam so easily, and the fact that we still have a committee meeting regularly says something.
And
So I think it's
generating good
positive.
ideas
Right.
and, yeah.
Well, I hope I feel like we're generating momentum now. So,
Yeah.
and I know everybody gets frustrated at how slow things are, but I feel like we have, as I said at the stakeholders meeting, if you think about the village of Northeast Harbor as it was even 5 years ago and as it is now, there's been a lot
Yeah.
has changed for the better. You know,
Absolutely.
Main Street feels good now, it really.
It
Yeah.
does, yeah.
much more vibrant. We've got the MD 365 building with
Yeah.
it houses, you know,
Almost.
at least a dozen
Signage,
people.
food trucks, and
We've got.
Well, and the wider sidewalks, I mean, everybody, oh,
They're nice.
but they're
Yeah,
really nice.
are.
It used
Very
to
nice.
be, get clogged up with somebody
Right.
standing there with a
Yes.
dog.
And I've had people complain, well, that other sidewalk on the other side's too narrow, and I say, that's because it's the express lane.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. This is the carpool lane, that's the express lane.
I'm gonna use that.
It doesn't feel like every other lot's a vacant lot now.
Yeah.
No.
It's-
No, that's true.
Last quick item, meeting dates for next year. We've been meeting on the second Wednesday for each calendar quarter. If that still suits everybody, I don't see a reason to change. And
Is this the third Wednesday?
this is because
This
the
is
town
not
had a
the-
conflict. There was
Oh,
another
okay.
meeting last week, so we had to change, but generally,
Second Wednesday.
Darrellin thinks that the second Wednesday, he didn't see an obvious conflict with that. So if that works for everyone, then does 4 o'clock continue to work for everyone?
So what's the
Which
next
months?
time would be?
So the next one would be the second Wednesday in October.
October.
And then January,
Second Wednesday in
April and
January,
July.
April and July, right? And then we
Okay.
can meet additionally as needed. The stakeholders are going to be meeting next month, so we'll have a further report, hopefully at the next meeting.
do you think it would be worthwhile to see if a COA student might like to join this committee?
Oh, that's a great
great
idea.
idea.
Really good
I know,
idea.
that's a fresher
This could be-
perspective.
I like
Yeah.
that idea.
I would love that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
good.
good.
I thought the sustainability committee, that's a no-brainer, but why not this committee as well?
One who lives here, maybe.
Yeah, that's the idea. Is that, yeah.
And I'm not officially on this committee, but I want to say thank you to the officers for continuing to serve.
Yes, absolutely.
Looks good in our obituary.
Not everyone was thinking that
Okay.
That's a good line, actually.
Here's hoping the temperature's gone down a few degrees.
I know, we're
Yeah.
going home, yeah.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Online. And Derwin's hopefully on his way back here.
He's gonna-
He's back. There he is. All right.
It's okay.
I gotta go to my
Matt,
neighborhood.
those fans in the neighborhoods were really nice.
Are you on that?
Well, the festival
The next meeting?
bought those.
A
I think they're like,
They're very cool.
they don't have any moving parts or anything.
Oh,
So they,
Quiet.
yeah, they're
and
quiet.
they were
He doesn't
Really,
have to
Yeah.
show up.
good.
Yes.
are they sharing them with the neighbors?
Well, it's funny, the Beatrix Parent Society has a meeting tomorrow, and they were very concerned. Do you have air conditioning? We said, no, we've got fans up above. But actually, our fans up above, if we turn them on high, it's almost too much air,
Right.
and it will blow things around. So we thought, well, they left the festival left their fans out, so we'll just